Some collectors lament that iconic Marvel comic books from the 1960s are priced out of reach, but not all of them. Stay tuned for the video.
Anachronic.
Hi comic book guys and gals, I'm Joe and welcome to Anachronic Comics. Now, Marvel came to prominence in the 1960s. Beginning with the Fantastic Four in 1961, these iconic heroes have been thrilling readers for decades, and serious collectors should own at least one comic book issued in the 1960s featuring the thrilling adventures of Marvel comic book characters that debuted in that decade. Now, these comics are packed with iconic moments and stories that shaped the Marvel Universe as we know it today. Owning these comics also means having a piece of history that will only increase in value over time. Additionally, these comics offer a unique look into the past and a window into the creative minds of the writers and artists of the time. Yes, #1 issues and many first appearances are certainly out of reach of most collectors. But not all comics are so expensive that you'd have to sell your house just to get a grade 2.0. For this exercise, I'm going to give myself a $250 budget per comic. That's $1,000 maximum to spend to buy the highest grade copies of Amazing Spider-Man, Avengers, Fantastic Four, and X-Men listed as keys on the Key Collector app from the 1960s that have some significance to the character. Now, to determine the cost, I'm going to use Go Collect's 1-year average, or if there is no 1-year average, the fair market value is listed. In addition, I'll only look for a 5.0 or higher. Since we're looking at the 1960s runs of these 4 comic books for this exercise, I'm excluding annuals and any specials that may have come out during the decade. So, let's take a look at Amazing Spider-Man first. Spider-Man burst onto the scene in Amazing Fantasy number 15, quickly followed by Amazing Spider-Man number 1 in 1963. Although the first issues introducing Spider-Man's greatest rogues gallery are quite expensive at fine or higher, since we're looking at a maximum of $250, we may find some bargains in the sub-38 issues drawn by Steve Ditko. If not, there were a total of 79 Amazing Spider-Man comic books issued in the 1960s, so we can go later in the decade and maybe get a classic John Romita Sr. cover. Checking the Key Collector app and Go Collect, there are fully 40 comic books that meet our criteria of a minimum of a 5.0 grade and a cost no more than $250, including 13 books drawn by Steve Ditko. The choice of one of these books for your 1960s Marvel Universe collection will fully depend on your preference of Ditko or Romita, classic villains, or first appearances. So for my pick, I'm going to go with ASM number 59, which has Mary Jane Watson's first cover appearance, and the story has Peter's first kiss with Gwen Stacy. Yes, I'm a hopeless romantic, but I can get a graded 7.0 for only $229. That leaves me $771 for Avengers, Fantastic Four, and X-Men. Let's move on to Avengers. Avengers comic books from the 1960s can be a great way to collect a piece of Marvel history of a number of Marvel's Silver Age characters, all in one comic book. Generally, Avengers keys can be worth a lot of money, and they're an investment, I think, that can potentially increase in value over time. Additionally, if you're a fan of the Avengers, these comics can provide you with an interesting and a unique look at the characters and stories from the early days of Marvel. Finally, owning one of these early Avengers keys from the 1960s is a must-have to any collection. The Avengers comic books in the 1960s began with number 1 in 1963 and ended with number 71 in 1969. Of these 71 issues, 53 are listed as keys on Key Collector app. So let's check out those books and see how many meet our criteria of a 5.0 for $250 or less. Now, Kirby did the artwork for the first 8 issues only, in addition to doing the layouts for issues numbers 14 through 16. So you would guess these issues may be too expensive, but if you want one of these Kirby issues, number 7 meets our criteria. A 5.5 has a 1-year average sale of $224. A nice looking cover. This key has the first appearance of Rick Jones as Bucky Barnes, and a classic battle of the Avengers versus the Enchantress, Loki, Scourge the Executioner, and Baron Zemo. Not a bad one to own, and Kirby art to boot. If a super low numbered Avengers is not for you, really? There are quite a few other 1960s Avengers issues that meet our criteria. You may decide on number 41, the first Avengers artwork by John Buscema. A 9.4 goes for $178. Number 43, the first appearance of the Red Guardian. A 7.5 goes for $227. Or maybe number 56 for you Cap fans, where an 8.5 goes for $118. For me, I'll stick with Kirby and Avengers number 7 and pick up a 5.5 for $224. So now I have 2 sweet 1960s Marvel comic books and have spent $453. Before we go on, if you enjoy my videos highlighting the Silver Age of comics, like this one, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe so I know that you like them and I'll continue to make them. Owning X-Men comic books from the 1960s is a great way to appreciate the history of the X-Men franchise and to get a better understanding of how the characters have evolved over the years. X-Men comic books from the 1960s are also a great way to add to your comic book collection and gain an appreciation for the art and storylines from the early days of the franchise. You can also gain insight into the cultural context of the time, as well as the social issues that the X-Men were created to tackle. X-Men number 1 was released in July of 1963 with a cover date of September 1963. X-Men 1 to 63 were released in the 1960s. Of these 63 issues, 46 are listed as keys on the Key Collector app. Now, looking through the stories and artwork, I worked it down to 8 that I would consider buying. Of the 8, 5 made our criteria of at least a 5.0 and a maximum spend of $250. They are X-Men number 11 from May of 1965, the first appearance of the Stranger. X-Men number 39 from December 1967, the debut of the new X-Men suits. Number 51 from December 1968, the iconic cover art by Jim Steranko. 53 from February 1969, the first professionally published cover art by Barry Windsor Smith. And 56 from May 1969, an iconic cover by Neil Adams. A tough decision because of the great cover artists represented. But for me, having a sub-20 X-Men is too hard to resist. So my pick is X-Men number 11. I'm picking up a 5.0 for $242. This brings my expenditure so far to $695. My last classic Marvel Comics 1960 titles that I would own is Fantastic Four. FF number 1 debuted in November 1961. The world's greatest comic magazine, as Stan Lee put on the covers, began what many called the Marvel Age of Comics. In fact, the positive reaction to the first issue resulted in Stan Lee staying in comics despite previous plans to leave. Owning original Fantastic Four comics from the 1960s can give you a unique insight into the creative processes of the most influential comic book writers and artists of the time. These comics are a great way to explore the groundbreaking storylines and art styles of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, 2 major creators who helped shape the Marvel Universe. Now, Fantastic Four has many significant titles during the 1960s, including issue number 4 from May 1962, which reintroduced Namor the Submariner, and issue number 5 from July 1962, which introduced the team's most frequent nemesis, Dr. Doom. These earliest issues were published bi-monthly, with issue number 16 from July of 1963, the cover title dropped the "the" and became simply Fantastic Four. Now, Kirby left Marvel in 1970, having drawn the first 102 issues, plus an unfinished issue, partially published in Fantastic Four number 108, with alterations, and it was later completed and published as Fantastic Four: The Lost Adventure in April of 2008. So, fully 93 issues of Fantastic Four were published in the 1960 cover dates. Of these 93, 70 are listed as keys. And of these 70s, I reviewed and brought down my list to 17 issues I wouldn't mind owning, and it met my criteria. However, some of these are on the upswing and have 90-day or FMVs that are significantly higher than the one-year average. So, to be fair, I've excluded them from my consideration. So that leaves me with 13 issues. Right away, I need to choose among the lowest numbered issue, an iconic Jack Kirby cover and interior art, or a significant storyline. The lowest number meeting the criteria is number 21. Perhaps the most significant cover for the storyline is number 67, and among a number of iconic Jack Kirby covers, I like and would go with number 57. Now, I'm always partial to the lowest numbered issue, and it's no different here. I'd go with number 21 as a 5.5. It has a one-year average of $226 with, I believe, some upside potential. So, for a total of $921, or less if I can negotiate the prices down a bit, I could potentially pick up a 7.0 Amazing Spider-Man number 59, a 5.5 Avengers number 7, 5.0 X-Men number 11, and a 5.5 Fantastic Four 21 to start my Marvel Silver Age Comics collection. Not bad. So would you have picked from these titles other comics that meet the criteria? So what other titles might you look at in Phase 2? Daredevil, for example? And that's once you save up another $250. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Be well, and I'll see you soon.